Cheryl Costa is an expert on big data and forensics, and she saw her first UFO at the age of 12. She's a veteran of 2 military services, the Air Force and the Navy, and she held a very high-level security clearance and eventually retired from a 32-year career at Lockheed Martin as a senior data security analyst. From 2013 to 19, Cheryl wrote the wildly popular UFO newspaper column, New York Skies, for the Syracuse New Times. Cheryl, along with her wife, Linda Miller Costa, co-authored the groundbreaking UFO Sightings Desk Reference from the USA 2001 to 2020 and has a new series of 50 individual state books that has UFO reporting detailed down to the zip code and locality level. She's the recipient of the 2018 IUFOC Researcher of the Year Award and has been presenting at UFO conferences for years. We talked about her book, her research, her personal life, her interest in magic and Freemasonry. Hope you enjoy it. Thanks for agreeing to talk with me.
Happy to.
It's so exciting. I'm so pumped. I've been looking at all of your data and I'm like so fascinated by all of it. And I'm just so happy that you did it and that you still do it. And it's so awesome because it's so needed. And I love it. I don't know. I don't know how you do it. How do you do it? Cheryl, how do you do it? How do you get into it? What made you go, okay, I know this data is here. How am I going to put this together and make it actionable and meaningful and amazing? What made you do it?
It started with, I had a newspaper column from 2013 to 2019, a weekly column.
Okay.
Right? And there were people who thought I wouldn't be able to write much more than 13 or 14 columns because what else is there to write about?
Yeah, but right.
I would go out to NewFork or MUFON databases, and I would bring in, I would find stories where there was a little, sometimes most of them are like a one-liner. Hey, we saw something, what? That was it.
Right.
And I would look for the ones that had a little bit more essay to them.
Mm-hmm.
And I would look at it. And then I had an arrangement with my editor after I'd given him four to try things out, and right. He said, I'll try you out for a month. And he calls me up about 4 weeks later, 5 weeks later, and he's got this tone like the Dread Pirate Roberts on Princess Bride. I'm almost fucking kill you in the morning. And he says, get over here. We got to talk. Anything. Okay.
Oh, okay.
So I'm late to the meeting because the parking lot's torn up. I go into the meeting. There's all these guys sitting around the board table. They're all columnists. I don't know this. When I walk in, he's talking to him. I'm 10 minutes late. I walk in. He stops. He points at me and says, there's our rock star.
Nice. And you're like,
what are you talking about? He says, you've been here a month. You're pulling. Remember, I'm on the online edition, which is what I pitched.
Right.
Because we're pulling more pages than all the columnists combined. And so he says, just keep doing it. Okay. We came to an understanding. Newspaper stuff is who, what, when, okay, high school English class for newspaper. Right. Who, what, when, where, why. Okay?
Right.
If I could tell you why and could prove it, I'd be getting a Pulitzer and a Nobel Prize. Okay.
Right.
And who is complicated because the public databases don't share with that. MUFON's got that stuff buried but locked down. The version we see when CMS comes up, at least on the membership edition, won't tell you who.
Right.
And
right.
NewFork doesn't tell you who either.
Right.
So my degree is in entertainment writing, not exactly pure journalism. So he was under Larry Dietrich, God bless his soul, he's passed now. But he said he agreed with me that we couldn't out anybody because of the stigma. Right. Okay. Right. So I could tell you what, when, and where. Right. Okay. So if I told you Bob and Susie were laying on the hood of his 67 Chevy, and then they saw the triangle or whatever they saw go overhead, it wasn't Bob and Susie and it wasn't that car, but all the issues with the sighting were the real thing. So I fattened the story up a little bit, took a little bit of artistic license, and that's how we did it. But all my articles, and this was the thing we got a lot of mail on from the beginning, all my articles took a very non-sensational approach. We just reported the UFO sighting.
Right.
Like I would report the burglary 2 blocks over, the fire 5 blocks down the street, the house robbery. You know, it was just another story.
Right.
Now we did something interesting with the articles too. We started putting these little one-liners. Remember all those one-liners I told you about?
Yeah,
I would take the one-liners, and I kept track of the one-liners, and I would put them in there, and so it would read like a one-liner, date and time. So it'd say something like, what's today? We're the 21st, September 21st, 10 p.m. Syracuse, New York. Couple saw a triangle fly off into the northeast sky, blotted out the stars. They saw a bright saucer-shaped craft come down, hover at the treetops, go back up in the sky, and wink out. Okay, and the wink out ones for the ones that really rattled people, they were just gone. You know?
Right? Yeah.
And so that's how I wrote my articles. And about 4 to 6 months later, and it's about 4 months later, the digital editor, who was I was always a freelance.
Okay, gotcha.
I was never an on-the-clock employee. I was a freelance.
Cool.
And but it's still a weekly column. And people say, well, that must be fun to write a weekly column. I said, it's a 500 to 1,000 word term paper every Thursday. Okay. And there were Wednesdays I would be sitting here sweating bullets because I didn't have anything. Of course, Linda would come along and say, well, you haven't done this and you haven't explored that. And have you ever thought about doing this? You know, and she was always a really fantastic muse.
That's awesome. So, perfect.
So what happened was you have to have something to write about.
Yeah.
And we started looking at, since New York State was my beat, so to speak, and I pitched the column as New York Skies. Okay, so the idea was, let's look at some of the cities. Let's look at some, things like this. When I went to get county information, while MUFON had it, it was usually wrong.
Oh, really? So the database was incorrect.
It was dependent upon the person putting in the entry.
Oh, okay.
And 3.5% didn't even fill in the city.
Oh, geez.
And later we would find out that about 7%. Now, in the bigger database, I'll give you a number in a minute on that. And about 7.5% would fill it in. They might say, Olean, New York, next to Joe's gas station. You can't sort on that.
Right.
IT person here, right?
Yeah, I know. Yeah, I'm right there with you. You got to sort on Joe's gas station, right?
They can't sort on it. It would come out on a report. It would come out as a separate entry. Okay, and there was a lot of that. So the ones that didn't fill out any cities, sometimes there would be a line in there. The sheriff told me not to tell you. My father told me not to tell you. My wife told me not to tell you. Something like that. Okay.
Right.
Or I'm afraid the government's watching me. Something like that. One of the cool ones was like from a really small village. There are only 24 houses in our village, and if I file a report, they'll know it was me. Okay. So there was that problem. So I started keeping track of the county information. I started looking it up. Okay. Yeah. I asked Newfork, do you guys keep county information? They don't even collect it. They told me, put a pin in the map, And honest to God, that was the line I got back from Davenport's office, Wow. So we started supplementing, putting that information, and gradually we ended up doing all either groups of counties that were together or all 62 counties in New York State. And we started showing them to retired state directors, retired state investigators from MUFON, that kind of thing, And there was a bunch of them around. And they would say, wow, we didn't know there was a cluster there. We didn't know there was a cluster there either. Okay, I'll give you an example. Before I came along, Linda and I came along, everybody thought Hudson Valley was the hot spot in southern part of New York State, and the Lake Erie effect was that, hey, that was the Lake Erie triangular frontier. That's where it all was.
Right.
We come along and do all the county data, or do all the cities and county data together. And all of a sudden, Monroe County, which is essentially the Rochester area, has almost as many as Lake Erie. And the investigators, these retired investigators, wow, we didn't know there was a Lake Ontario effect. Wow, And then they said, well, obviously Hudson Valley's got to be ground zero. And I said, no, actually, it's coming out to be Suffolk County, Long Island, Montauk Point.
Oh, imagine that.
So Long Island itself was in the top 4 positions.
Right.
Okay, number 1 for Suffolk. Manhattan was number 2 or 3, and then Nassau County came into it. So, it was in the top 4.
Right.
And so this stuff really got things going. So 4 to 6 months later, they're saying you're pulling a national audience show.
Right.
And then at the Christmas party, the publisher gets up there with the digital editor and he says, Cheryl's pulling an international audience. We're a dinky little upstate New York weekly giveaway paper. This is one of the ones you can get walking out of your dentist's office, walking out of the 7-Eleven.
It's like in the box,
the box stuff. And and the online edition. In fact, they did a 2-page, a page 2 story. Page 1 is the cover, and then page 2. Page 2 was always done by the editor of features or whatever. We're doing something special this week.
Right.
And Larry took the page thing there about around that year point. Okay. Mm-hmm. He said the most popular feature in our paper is not in print.
Wow. That's
it's
cool.
on the online edition. And it just kept growing over the next 8 years.
Wow.
Next 6 years. I'm sorry. We were doing it for 7 years, 238 articles.
Wow.
Okay. And 237 of them were published. Now, I was never censored, and I wrote some rowdy stuff that any place else would have probably got censored. Okay. I did. You'll love this. At one point when I had all this county information, I started, when I had it all done for MUFON, I did a report and I broke it down by as close as I could because they gerrymandering and all that kind of stuff. But I broke it down to, I don't know how to say this. I broke it down to congressional districts.
Oh,
I did
interesting.
a bar chart of all the congressional, all the amount of UFOs in New York State over the last, at that point, 15 years or something like that, by congressional district. And it went down, and we got all this hate mail from congressional offices and all this kind of stuff, phone calls and everything like that. The editor said, keep doing it, So, and then when I got the MUFON data all cleaned up, I think I said MUFON. I had one of them done first, and then I did the second one.
Right.
And then I put them together. Okay, the 2 databases did not line up. I had to go and change fields and things like this.
Right, of course.
It was a lot of work, and I didn't know what
amazing.
We really didn't know what we were doing.
Right.
Okay, but both Linda and I were former government contractors. And as a government contractor, you learn to do as little work as possible. Okay, now what does that mean? It means once you figure out how to do a particular job, you write down all the good notes, you put together a process procedure so you can do it faster next time.
Yep.
Okay, and it frees you up to do other things. And we got very good at doing that. Things that took us 2 or 3 months to do back in the day, I can do in a month now or a couple of weeks now.
Nice.
Things that took me a month to do then, I can do in a morning now.
Wow, it's great.
Okay,
it's great.
So we know how to do this. And so that was the deal. That was the big deal. The only article that was never published, it was 3 years into the column. Okay, we started in 2013, so this would have been around 2005, 2006. I'm sorry, 2013. This would have been, let's see, 13, 14, 15. It was around 2015 or so. And I wrote an article about what's disclosure going to possibly look like.
Oh.
Okay.
Right.
And I set a scene. I went to film school. I went to playwriting school. I knew how to set a scene,
Right.
So I set the scene. And said, the president's going to be out there, maybe the vice president, the leadership of both houses of Congress, maybe some of the joint chiefs are going to be there for this thing. And they're going to announce that the United States has made contact with a spacefaring race. Okay. And of course, every debunker in the world, they're not going to do it like that. They're never going to do it. This stuff is like imaginary, So, okay, fine. But I said, but how is this going to impact our culture? I said, suddenly our ET friends are going to be the darlings on Good Morning America, or some of these other shows, The View or something like that.
Right.
We're going to have perfumes inspired by the off-worlders, all the fashions inspired by our culture. We weren't going to be able to get away from them for 5 years on TV.
At least, right.
And the things that anthropologists, and that's why I say these guys are anthropologists,
right?
Because they don't want to contaminate the site.
Mm-hmm.
And if they come down and start sharing their stuff, it's going to contaminate our culture. Suddenly we're going to be wearing alien fashions, alien perfume, alien hairdo if they got hairdos, all this stuff. And I got a call back from my editor, and he says, "We're not publishing that one. Send us something else over." And I always tried to have 2 or 3 ready to go.
Right.
And he says, "Did I do something wrong? You've never censored me." So we're not censoring you. We're just spiking the article. Spike me. The editors had a spike on the desk. It's just not going anywhere, or not that version.
Why?
I said, "Why?"
Yeah.
He said, "You've been writing this column for 3 years, weekly. It's about 150 articles.
Right.
You've established, we thought this was going to be a silly topic when you started, and you have established such gravitas on this. We think the snarky articles below you."
So it wasn't out of outright censorship. They just thought, it's too snarky. We're going to put this one on the spike.
Now, when I published my my book of somebody ran off of that copy too.
Your desk reference?
I don't believe it. I put copies of the desk reference here for my quick use, and they disappear. They disappear. Okay. Guests,
Yes.
And it can be terrestrial guests, or it can be other things.
Yeah. In my house, it's almost the same. It doesn't matter.
Hijinks in the night. That's how we call it. We call it hijinks in the night. A good friend of mine on Twitter, Linda, who's an investigator, she says, activity in the household. She goes,
activity in the household. Yeah, it's another good way to put it. Yeah, definitely.
But the bottom line was, when the paper went under in June of 2019, everybody who had a column there who hadn't been bought out or something, we all got to write a final column.
Oh, cool.
And I wrote one. But I went to the publisher and said, I was always a freelance. He said, yeah. I said, can I go on the server and harvest the final edited versions of all my columns? He said, sure.
Cool.
So they gave me an ID in to do it beyond my normal posting ID, and I harvested all 237 articles.
That's awesome. Very cool. Very cool.
And then during COVID, during 2020, during lockdown, I put them all into an 8.5 by 11 book and published these called the UFO Beat, and it's available on Amazon.
That's awesome. Very cool. Definitely going to check that one out. That's great. I mean, that's a massive body of work. I mean, and that's got to make you so proud. I mean, you got into it, and then boom. I mean, so what got you into it before
statistics?
Yeah, no. But what got you into the whole UFO thing before all of that? All before the column, before any of that? What happened?
Real short story. We'll go back real quick.
Okay.
Back around 1965, I was about 12, going on 13. A couple of weeks before school was supposed to start, late August, that type of thing. And we were coming down from my uncle's farm. He was up on a hill. We were coming down the farm. And it had been a wet season. The corn, I remember the corn being higher than the Chevy Impala. It was a real wet season. Good crop that year. Yeah. Coming down, my mother had my father stop the car. It was about 4 o'clock in the afternoon. And I said, why are we stopping? Did they have a flat or something?
Right.
And my mom pointed out into a clear blue western sky. And there is a silver ball parked out there.
Wow.
Now, give your audience an idea. Hold your arm out. Look at your little finger. That's how big the fingernail. That's how big it was.
Right. Okay?
So we sat there and talked about it. Mom said, well, NASA's only 5 or 6 years old. Maybe it's something they're doing. Maybe it's a weather balloon. Maybe it's the Air Force, Might be people from another world.
Oh, wow. So she did actually say that at the time.
She said it exactly that way.
Wow.
And that fascinated the 12-year-old. You know what I mean?
Yeah. Oh,
All
yeah.
right, we get back on the road. Get down the bottom hill. Dad turns left to head back home. Okay, this little farming area in upstate New York. And I got up. The Chevy Impala in those days had these big windows.
Oh, yeah.
And I got up there and said, who are you guys? Who are you guys?
Yeah, yeah.
And when that thing decided to leave, about 10 minutes later, I could still see it. It was like, pew! Didn't see a thing like that again in the movies until like early 90s.
Wow.
Just gone. Star Trek, when it goes into warp and there's a kind of thing.
Yeah.
Didn't see a thing like that until like the early 90s. It was like, 65, 75, 85, 95. Yeah, it was like 30 years later.
Wow.
That changes you. That changes
you. Oh, yeah.
You.
Yeah, definitely.
When you're a teenager, mom and dad are stupid.
Yeah, of course.
Mom and dad, my old man, my old lady, whatever.
Yeah.
Mom and I developed a relationship where we could talk about the topic matter.
Oh, cool. Very cool.
She'd get books at the library. I'd get books at the library. I was a boy person in those days. If I saw an article about UFOs in Barbershop and Argus magazine, it came home with me, that kind of thing,
Yeah,
sometimes just the page, So we had a lot of conversations about it. It was like giving each other little book reports on Saturday night if Dad had to work or something,
Right.
And got into the late 60s. Don Danigan's book, Chariot of the Gods, came out.
Oh, right. That was huge then, wasn't it? That was massive for the time. Everybody was talking about it. It was like he was on talk shows and everything.
They just kept printing copies over in Switzerland, Yeah. And we had a big paperback edition.
Yeah.
She dog-eared on the top. I dog-eared on the bottom. We destroyed that book. But we were both conversant. Now, when I went into the service and they were screening a bunch of us for security clearances.
Oh.
One of the 150 organizations you couldn't be a member of was this organization called MUFON, and this other organization called ICAP.
That's interesting.
MUFON at that point was only about 2 years old as it was. It was an old APRO chapter up in the
Right.
And it was, okay, I'm just going to keep my mouth shut, So I did 2 years in the Air Force. I was a cable lineman.
Okay, cool.
Served in Vietnam, combat service in Vietnam. Okay,
Thank you very much for your service. Appreciate it.
It was crazy stuff over there.
I bet.
You climb telephone poles. People shoot at you on those things, Talk about a hazardous job,
Yeah, for sure.
I got out. I did have a sighting over there. Christmas Eve, 1971. I was 19. I was 19. And a friend of mine and I were walking down. We were going to go to midnight mass for something to do. We formerly were Catholics.
Yeah.
And we were going to get out for something to do. And we were walking down to the chapel, and some of those gazillion stars in the sky night. And they had shut down most of the runway lights. So there was not a lot of light pollution. And we were out on a peninsula. There's a place called Cameron Bay. And it's a huge peninsula, okay? It's sand. They issue that's desert boots instead of jungle boots. Okay?
Wow.
And we saw this thing going across the sky, and it stops.
Oh.
And my friend said, jets don't stop. Helicopters don't fly that fast.
Right.
You're sitting there looking at it and says, what the hell is that? And I said, with some stuff I've been reading over the years, I said, if that's what I think it is, it's going to start dancing around like a fairy. And darn if it didn't. And then gone,
Wow.
Neither one of us had our mind on midnight mass.
Right. I bet.
So, okay. So I was in the Air Force for 2 years, got out on a hardship discharge with my hometown, got wiped out in a flood. Okay. 2 years later, I tried to go back in the Air Force. I was a sergeant at that point, and tried to go back in. They were end of the Vietnam War, they were reducing forces and things like this.
Gotcha. Yeah.
So I'm leaving the recruiter's office and said, "No, we can't take you. You got rank." And I'm walking down the hall, and the Navy recruiter, "Hey kid, come here." And he offered me, well, 6-year contract, offered me 2-year package of school, high-tech school.
There you go.
So that's what I did.
Cool.
And at that point, I got back into the situation where I was under this time, a high security clearance.
Oh, wow.
Okay. I trained for submarines, and my DV-214, I can't tell you exactly what I did, but my DV-214 says, in the last discharge papers, I was a first-class petty officer, it said Senior Electronic Warfare Specialist.
Nice.
Okay. Now, I basically did signal analysis, and that's as much as I can tell you. Okay?
Gotcha.
I listened to signals and I analyzed them. So I'm an analyst at that point. Okay.
Okay.
Cool. And then what also happened was they figured out that I had a darkroom at home.
Wow.
They sent me to Periscope Photography School. So besides
neat.
gathering ELINT or electronic intelligence, I also was grabbing, when we did surface ops, it was special things. I was doing photo intelligence, click, through the periscope, or one of the periscopes.
Nice.
So that's the kind of work I did. There was a lot of analysis work that I did, and that's as much as I can tell you about it.
Okay? That's cool. But you enjoyed it. Did you actually enjoy it? Well, I mean, it sounds like you did. It sounds like
I had a blast.
Yeah. Sounds like it was awesome.
It was that Tom Clancy stuff. It was a blast. Trust me, it really was fun. I had a lot of fun with that, and I'm still in contact with a lot of people from the old boat. It really
that's great. That's great.
That's cool. That was that. Now, I left the Navy, and I quickly found myself working for a defense contractor. And they said, "Well, we have to get to a security clearance." And I said, "Well, fill in these numbers here on my application." And they said, "Why?" I said, "Well, I had a really good one before I left the Navy." And they called me in like 3 weeks later and said, "We've never had one come in under 4 months, and yours came in 2 weeks." Okay, I told you. So for between my almost 10 years in the military, and then 32 years with Lockheed Martin, I was under a clearance for the better part of 40 years.
Like most of your life.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Honestly, 40 years of my adult life. I'm 70 years old. So so the bottom line was, when they retired me out in 2011, that kind of took that stricture off. And then I started finishing a 40-year-old bachelor's degree. Now, when I say that, I took courses every place I went.
Right.
Associate's degree while I was in the Navy. I took books to see with me, came back and took the test. And I always messed up the curve because I studied everything really hard because I didn't know what he was going to test on. And I always put the test score up to the point where it messed up the curve. Okay. Oh, it's fun. So all this stuff happened. So I get retired from Lockheed, and I go to finish a bachelor's degree in Empire State College, New York State University in New York. Took all my credit in, and I had to do some residency. Mm-hmm. Okay, so I was doing those classes and things, did some unique stuff, and they did it with me instead of a regular classroom because I was an older student. They allowed me to they put me into a mentorship.
Oh, that's cool.
So it was like going to Oxford. We were working one-on-one with a professor.
That's pretty cool.
Which was fun. Yeah, it was really fun. I tell me what to go home and read, and I'd go home and read, and he or she would have me come in for 2 hours, maybe about every 3 weeks, and sit in there with a cup of tea and argue for 2 hours.
That's the kind of class you want to have right there.
Oh, we had a lot of fun. We really did. And they liked me because, especially when I wrote my papers, I had that sort of a journalistic approach to my writing. So they love my papers because they were entertaining.
It wasn't just going, you actually had the flow. That's awesome.
So there was a lot of fun there. So bottom line, by 2012, I'm working at a newspaper, but I'm in the tech department. And our tech department we were the electronic technicians. Mm-hmm. and we were we also made the plates every night. Think about the plates. They're not pouring hot lead or anything. Imagine something that looks like cookie sheets with no edges on the side, going through some kind of a photographic situation, going through an automated bath. We had a big conveyor belt type of thing. And we made the plates every night. When I first started out, we'd make maybe 150 plates for the morning edition. Before I left, the paper was contracting to other newspapers so they didn't have to have presses anymore. So we had 12 newspapers. I was making 1,000 plates a night.
Wow.
You know, it was crazy. And so one night, was, if I remember it very well, November 5th, 2012. The 700-ton Swiss press had just started rolling. All we had to do was sit back for 90 minutes and let the press run.
Right. Okay?
So we're sitting there. I had my terminal on. I called up the web, decided to take a quick look at CNN.com, see if anything news was going on. And it was this little sidebar story, about 150 words. UFOs have been declining since the 1980s. Maybe they were always just an urban legend.
What?
Yeah.
Whoa.
And I looked at that, and while I was not a fanatic about it, I said about UFOs, I said, that feels like misinformation. That can't be right.
Yeah.
So for the first time in my life, I went out to the National UFO Reporting Center. This is before I got my collar. And I crawled back a couple of pages on their website, found some end-of-year totals type thing, took from 1985 up to 2012, and the thing went up like a rocket. You know, parabolic curve, you know. Yeah. I'm going, what memo didn't the UFOs get? You know, and we're talking not just hundreds of sightings, we're talking thousands of sightings. I'm going, oh my God, you know.
Right.
So, so I was finishing this degree. And so I started reading next night. After the press got done, I started reading some of these reports. And I kind of bought into the secret sauce. Oh, yeah, it's just kooks, nuts, and crackpots that pile these things. Right. And I'm reading these very sane things. We never believed in it before, but last night we were on top of our camper and we saw da-da, you know.
Yeah.
And so I started writing these things up. And I went around to 6 different editors, including the paper I was working for, and they laughed me out of the office, chased me out of the office, all this stuff.
Wow.
And I was about ready to give up, and I got a text, actually not text, it was like an email from Larry Dietrich at the Syracuse New Times. He said, come on over, let's talk. Now, Larry was bought out from the paper I worked for.
Okay.
He was a senior copy editor, you know. They were thinning staff, you know. Yeah. And so I went over to see him. We talked for about 20 minutes over a cup of tea. He said, we both were about the same age, so we'd read the same books in the late 60s, early 70s.
Cool.
So he said, I'm conversant. I'm sympathetic to the topic. I'm the editor-in-chief. I can't write that column, but you can.
Oh, cool.
Okay.
Yeah.
So I'll try you out for a month. And of course, I told you what happened to that. So
yeah.
So that's where we went with the whole thing, and how we got into statistics was we got to that point where we had done New York State stuff, and it was October of 2015. Linda and I were sitting in our favorite pub, and we were a couple of pints waiting for our burgers, you know. Yeah. And she said, "Look at all the cool stuff we found." And she's the real scientist of the two of us. Remember, I got an arts and entertainment degree. I got a top hat and a cane. She's got the real science degree. She's got a master's in library science. She worked for the National Academy of Science. She was the head librarian at the Environmental Protection Agency for 15 years, you know, toxicology, that kind of thing.
That's awesome.
She said, let's do the whole country. We figured it'd take a year. It took us 18 months worth of weekends.
Wow.
Okay, it was 2,000 hours. Roughly.
Wow.
And then we published what we call we call it the White Book. It's the UFO Sightings Desk Reference 2001 to 2015. Okay.
Yeah. That's
our
awesome.
logo. Okay.
Yeah.
And that logo came from, people thought that was clip art, something like that. I had an artist friend of mine, and I said, I need something. And I told her what I needed.
Yeah.
And so she said, well, what kind of shape do you want me to do? And I picked out a couple off of this sheet of paper that had a whole bunch of different shapes. I said, take these 6 and kind of just do a pencil sketch. Nothing fancy. Just show me a pencil sketch. Let me get your interpretation. I don't want it to look like commercial art.
Right.
She said, what do you want it to look like? She says, I'm investigating you. You said you saw a UFO. I want to see what you sketched on the back of a pizza box or on a couple of napkins.
There you go. Yeah.
So she did that approach.
That's cool.
And then I picked the one we picked that one with the windows because it's what Betty and Barty and Hill had seen.
That's right.
And we said, okay, fine, let's go with that. And she inked it, and that's been our trademark.
That's awesome. That's very, very cool. That, I mean, the amount of the work that you had to do to, I mean, I'm in IT as well, and just playing around in Excel for anybody who's never done it is mind-boggling, let alone taking disparate databases and trying to jam them together into something that makes any type of sense.
Whenever we had to do major manipulations of the fields and things, we brought it down into Excel.
Gotcha.
Okay, because it was easier to change fields that way, and then suck it back up. In fact, we didn't do it with a fancy database. We just simply did it with Access.
Just Microsoft Access, just making this Lincoln fields and just making it happen, right?
It worked well, and occasionally for some kinds of things to generate a chart, we would bring it down into Excel to generate certain charts. The Access wasn't so good at that, but again, they were compatible from taking data back and forth from each other, so it worked out well.
Jeez, but that's just amazing. I mean, I think a lot of that is just mind-boggling where you have some of these institutions that we like to call as institutions now, NICAP, you have, MUFON, that just, let's just not fill out all these required boxes as like counties. It's, like other things that are, you would think are just blatantly obvious for somebody to be able to go, yeah, let's do that. And the other part of that is that nobody thought to do what you did.
They didn't. And that was the thing Linda was pointing out. One of the arguments she had with me about halfway through writing the column, said, look, I'm going to make a joke out of this. Most people, if you talk to them back when we first started writing the column, the golden days of UFOs was like the 40s, 50s, and 60s, the FM radio station, 40s, the UFOs from the 40s, 50s, and 60s, that kind of thing,
Yeah.
And she says, you're showing me numbers that are greater than anything they had.
Of course.
But after 1968, newspapers stopped reporting them.
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Right.
So there's this illusion that those were the golden days.
Mm-hmm.
But if you look at our book, in the 2020 book, we call it the Pink Book.
Oh, yeah.
Pull that one out. We call it
the
Pink Book. Okay.
Right.
Pink because we thought we might end up testifying before Congress when they got around to doing congressional hearings, and it's still on the table.
Yeah, it is.
So they, Linda and I, when they first approached us, the usual suspects, our lobbyists in DC.
Yeah.
When they first approached us, they said, "Would you guys be willing to do it? Blue Book didn't even do what you guys have done."
Right. That's what's amazing. It's like you two, the both of you, did something that nobody had thought of and or could do.
And they sat on all this
70 years.
Both databases sat on all this stuff. NewFork since the 70s, MUFON for the last 70, So, Linda and I said, okay, we were federal contractors. You spend your career trying not to have to testify before Congress. Okay. So we said, okay, fine. And her and I got talking, and I said, well, picture this. We're sitting there on C-SPAN testifying before these guys. We've been down there. We had 30-year careers in D.C. We know what a congressional hearing looks like,
Right.
So we said, they're up there, they're thumbing through books, things like this. We want them to know that that's our book.
There you go.
That book has been done by a couple of women. So we decided to make it bright pink, bright fuchsia, brighten up the flag in an aircraft, and they'll know it's our book, and then we dedicated it to Coral Lawrence, who was the founder of APRO in 1952.
That's awesome. That is awesome. That is very cool.
And so that was the other thing, because when we came out with the White Book, we caught a lot of hell. People said, where do these women come from? They fall out of the sky?
Right. Yeah.
No, they're not field investigators. The numbers, charts, graphs, and numbers, you can't use that for UFOs. I'm like, you got to do a field investigation.
Wow.
And my first argument, when people cornered me on some show like this, I said, we're old ladies. We don't do cow patties. We don't do barbed wire. We don't do ticks. And I don't march around in Mrs. Murphy's barnyard at night looking for UFO evidence. Come on, I said, Indiana Jones, Last Crusade, investigation starts in the library, scientific investigation.
Right.
So
right.
That's the tone both Linda and I took.
That's great. No, I mean, let the data speak for itself. I mean, like you're not embellishing anything. I mean, the data is the data, and it's amazing that they had that kind of response. Now,
did the hate mail we got?
Was it from MUFON itself, like the officials? How are the officials at that level to you guys on that?
The former director, Jan Hardison, had a copy of the white book. I sent him 2 copies. I sent two to Peter Davenport as well, and they had them on their desk, from what I understand. Okay,
there you go.
So this is a good thing. I mean, nobody else had given them something like this.
Right.
He's trying to get grants and things like that from MUFON. He had a book on his desk that showed them how the scale of numbers. New York Times sent Ralph Blumenthal up to do an interview with us. Came up on the train, spent a day with us.
That's great.
So the day after the electronic version, and if your listeners want to see that article. If you go out to your search engine, do a search for NYT for New York Times, Costa, Costa, UFO. Okay, NYT, Costa, UFO. And you will get an April 24th online edition of Science Magazine. They put us in Science Magazine. It was a real serious article. And their argument was 2017, this was 2017. 2017 was a disclosure year. There was the Obama era disclosure coming from the National Archives and all those downloads that were in there with the Kissinger documents.
Right.
Our thing came out in April, and then December 16th was the big reveal about ATIP. Okay, so 17 was a big disclosure, but most people just point at December 16th. But if you really look at the big picture, there was a big effort by a newspaper of record, world newspaper of record, to get this disclosure ball rolling.
Right.
So that article came out on the online edition, and then the next morning hit the printed paper. My phone started ringing at 8:30 and didn't stop ringing till 10:30 that night. I called the newspaper on my lunch break, and they said, our phones have been ringing off the hook too. News directors, editors all over the world.
It's amazing.
Want to talk to you.
That's great.
To us. So again, a little goofy weekly paper in upstate New York, that does all the show schedules and stuff,
like where the bands are playing this week.
exactly. And so that was kind of where the thing was. The other thing we took a hit is they're a gay couple. We took a huge amount of hit on that, and of course I'm a trans lady, so we took a ton of hit on that. How can we trust their numbers? They're queer. They don't know what they're talking about. They're women. They don't know what they're talking about. And so when I went to do the 2019, I got booked to someplace almost every 2 weeks for the entire year. Now, Linda couldn't go. I was retired. I could go. Linda was still working. She was what they call that end of career coasting job. She went to work for Lemoyne College. It's a Jesuit school in Syracuse.
Oh, okay, cool.
Okay, and well, hell, when the white book came out, one day she's in some kind of a staff meeting and everything, and they just said, anybody got any other news? They're talking about so and so got married and so and so, just got back in Europe, And Linda said, we just had a science magazine. My wife and I just had a science magazine article in the New York Times, followed by one in the Times of London. Followed by, one in Rome and da-da-da-da. Hell, the Vatican has a copy of the White Book.
Wow. That's awesome.
So we're going on, and they went to leave the meeting. This one professor asked her some serious questions about what we did for the statistics. His wife was with him, and she's a professor, and she heard Linda say UFOs, and she almost fell down on the floor laughing so hard. What a ludicrous topic, man. Okay. 2019, I was booked someplace almost every 2 weeks for almost the whole year.
Right.
And in fact, the funny thing about that was I would go to the conference, come back, wash the clothes I wore at that conference, and then repack them in the same travel bag. I wore the same set of clothes all year long. It was it was a good set of outfits. I said, why not?
Yeah.
But
Yeah.
the problem was that whole gay thing was really weighing on me in 2018. Some of the crap we were taking from the trolls and detractors and things, right?
Right.
So I added 4 more slides to the beginning of the presentation. After the title slides, I said, here's a picture of each of us. We're not sisters. We're a married couple. And I threw another slide, and there was 3 pictures. Picture of me in the Air Force, my combat helmet on, boy picture. Picture of me in the Navy with a big bushy pole pony and beard, for God's sake. And then like one of my glamour shots, and I said, this is me, guys. Okay. Then I showed the next picture was me and her jumping over a broom in our sacred union. And then one in our real legitimate legal marriage in 2011, a Zen monk standing there. We were both Buddhists. And then I got to the last one, and I looked at the audience and says, guys, we catch a lot of crap for being who we are. We're genuine. We've done this incredible work. And if you can't deal with us, you're never going to deal with ET.
That's such a great point. Oh my God, Cheryl, that's amazing. Seriously. I mean, we can't get our shit together just to deal with normal things on Earth, like things that people are squeamish about. I mean,
I was expecting rocks and tomatoes from the audience. 600 people stood up and gave me a standing ovation.
That's amazing. That's
very
awesome.
It was pretty solid like that thereafter.
That's
I
great.
had very, very good feedback the whole year. And then, of course, we get into COVID. And that kind of shot everything to hell.
Yeah, no, but that's so great. Thank you for having the courage to do that and stand up and just tell everybody who you are and not give a shit. I mean, that takes huge guts, and I applaud you for that. Thank you so much.
Now that Linda has retired, the last several presentations, so Linda and I presented in the Ozarks back in April. Okay,
cool.
And the first 10 minutes of it, I basically, first thing after we were introduced, I said, okay, I've been the face of this thing for 6 years. Okay. Linda's the scientific brains. I got the top hat and the cane. Okay. So let her tell you why we did this.
Right.
And she explained, she thought that UFOs needed to be studied kind of like they studied disease model and found like a love canal.
Okay.
They used epidemiology techniques to see where these peaks of things happen.
Got it. Okay.
And why are they there? And a lot of people tell me, oh, why is there UFO showing up more there than over there? And this is what we were trying to do. Linda and I, on that October 15th pub thing, said, and Linda said it this way, let's measure the phenomenon.
Oh, that's great.
Let's look at the disease model instead of individual autopsies.
Right.
That's what field investigations are, is post-mortems on a sighting.
Yes, totally.
And we decided to study the disease model, see how big it is, and use 21st century information.
Right.
Okay. Now, when we did the white book, people said, why didn't you go back 40 years? So we said, okay, when we were working on the pink book, I got a data dump for that window of time, 2000 going back to 1960.
Right.
Okay. It amounts to, we combined, remember, putting those databases together is messy.
It's messy. Yeah, real messy.
And 1960 to 2000, Newport and MUFON data together amounted to 15,156 sightings.
Wow.
Sounds like a lot. Print it out on a graph, and it goes across. It looks like a little snake or dragon crawling across the lap. Little 7-year humpy things. Okay, there's a peak about every 6 to 7 years, and it trails off. And a peak. Okay, this is a measurement over time. Okay,
right.
Not many people had shown us that kind of stuff.
Right, totally.
And we said, okay, this is 1960 to 2000, and the peak they averaged 200 to 300 a year, as little as 150. Okay. And then I can send you what that chart looks like. I'll send it to you on Twitter.
Okay.
And then we got to 2001, which is what we measured in our pink book, 2001 to 2020, 20 years. Okay.
Right.
2000 was about 600. 2001 was 3,500.
Wow.
And that 13,150, I've got that many for 2011, 2012, and 2013 each year. And it's, so if the 60s through up 2000 is the golden age of UFOs, baby, we are living in the platinum or diamond age.
You know, I often wonder that too. Now, looking at all the data and everything, you know, there was all the things that went through my mind were, okay, like you said, people were saying early on, hey, I don't want to tell you where I live because, you know, the 24 people that the houses in my community, you know, all of those things, the stigma, the ridicule, the, you know, the Robertson panel that, you know, that basically we're still trying to wash away now. It was still a huge deal. So the people that actually did report, you know, that took guts for them to do that as well. That took a lot for them to do, because we've heard all the stories that, you know, that even, you know, the government maybe had their hands in MUFON at one point, and
they did. Every UFO group in those days did.
Yeah, and people were scared to report it. So I mean, if you look at those numbers and you think, by God, like I think you even said this at one point, if it was only like 1% of the people that actually made the report that actually witnessed something, the numbers would be astounding, right? I mean, if you only had 1% of the people that actually saw the thing, that actually took the time to go make the report that was documented, the numbers would be astronomical for the amounts that actually exist in existence, right?
Okay, let me give you a couple of numbers. Remember, in 2020 during the lockdown, all the time in the world to do something and no place to go.
Sit outside and stare at the sky. Yeah,
with that too. But what I did was I started looking ahead to the 2021 book, but we would have to have the 2020 data to finish it.
Right, okay? Right.
So we had to wait the year up. And I got a call in early March, just before we really went into the lockdown. Mm-hmm. Infections were being reported everywhere, but it looked like we were getting locked down.
Right.
And I got a call from George Knapp, and he said, and your phone's ringing off the hook, mine are. Like, people are getting, you know, remember, UFOs had tanked.
Right.
2017, 2018. They, from 2013 down to about 2018, they were falling by 30% a year.
Wow.
Okay. And everybody said, oh, you know, I was getting mail. I was still writing a column. They're saying, oh, Space Force chased them away. And, oh, they're sick of looking at us. Oh, my God, we're going to have an apocalypse and they don't want to be here for it. You know, I heard everything. And so we looked at this and we thought about this a minute. And I said, okay, then I'm going to start working on this. And people were pushing us to get data down to the city level. Mm-hmm. Well, we did a calculation. First thing we found out was it would be about 6,500 pages. That's about a foot and a half thick.
Wow.
And that's with 8.5 by 11 pages. We said, can't do that. We'll have to come up with something else. But
right.
And we did a scan to print out the data by state, county, and city. Mm-hmm. Take the numbers. And right there at 3.5%. Mm-hmm. Our data for this 2001 to 2020 is 167,632. Reported sightings between MUFON and Newport.
Wow.
So that 3% amounted to about 25K of records. And the overall the next 7% that had it filled out wrong or spelled wrong or had Joe's gas station or the golf course or something like that filled in with it was another 50K. Okay, so when you're dealing with big numbers, 2 or 7% is a lot.
Yeah.
So we figured, okay, we'll have to put the effort in, go in with a golden mail list, bring the database down into Excel, line a golden mail list up with the fields, color that so we could get it out later, and then merge it in and sort it by state and city. And then where the counties weren't correct, we filled it, we corrected it, just doing a copy. And where it wasn't filled in, we just copied it in. Okay. That was about a 500 to 800 lines a day, 7-hour day. It was like going back to work at Lockheed. I suddenly, middle of August, started working on this. was putting in 35 hours a week. And it took me from the middle of August to the first week of January, 850 hours. Never a former government contractor. I lost my time, right? You know. And we wanted to know what it would take to do this. And it was like going to work every day.
It was,
and then we got done in early January with that information, got everything formatted that we needed with the new 2020 data. It took like a day to do. And boom, we had the 167,632. So I put the book together, ran all the reports, all the tables and graphs and everything the way we were going to do it for this book.
Right.
By this point, we have discovered drivers. We've discovered influencers.
Really?
I'll give them to you here in a minute.
Wow.
And so it only took, instead of taking 2,000 hours with the two of us doing it, it took me 850 hours to do it by myself. It was easy.
850 hours, Cheryl, doesn't sound easy.
But no, it was really just solid work getting it done and then publishing it. Okay, so here's the drivers. Now, people knee jerk all the time. Okay, what I call, and this is not insulting, but I'm making a point. The armchair UFOologists. Think population. Now, if you print out a map with our data and you did it by dots, it looks like it's all concentrated around the bigger cities.
Right.
Okay.
That's because that's where most people are at.
Well, it also fuels that thing more eyes to see.
Exactly. Yeah.
But we also discovered that that's true to a certain degree. But I'm going to blow a hole in it. I'm going to blow 2 holes in it real quick.
Cool.
We did a chart by month, and the local state investigator looked at it and said, what do we need a monthly chart for?
Right.
And we almost got talked out of putting it in the book. Linda was putting it in the white book, and we found out that there was a quiescent amount of sightings through the year, dog walkers and smokers.
Okay. Yeah.
And then around June, July, August, the chart went up like that. And trailed off into the fall. And then by October, it was coming down to that quiescent amount, the yearly, day-to-day stuff. And we thought it was like that every place. Get down to the middle level states, down around Virginia, go across the country, that peak comes down and the baseline comes up. Get down south, it's statistically flat. Get down deep south, southern Texas, Georgia, Florida, and there's an actual dip in the summertime. It's just too hot to be outside. Temperate weather was a driver.
Wow. Okay.
Linda discovered that one doing the charts.
Makes sense.
We suspected that leisure time was a driver. Okay. And when we went into lockdown, I was talking about this on Coast to Coast in early March, just as we'd gone into lockdown. And callers were calling into George Knapp's Coast to Coast and saying, hey, we're going into this lockdown. There's a perfect laboratory to test your leisure time thing.
There you go.
March and April were through the roof.
Oh, yeah.
Okay.
Right.
Then we did something called a scan for hours of the day.
Okay.
The hours of the day is kind of goofy. Draw a quick rendition of it. All right. Okay. Hours of the day looks like that.
Whoa. Okay.
This is like 1 o'clock in the morning. This is like about 4:30, 5 o'clock in the afternoon. It goes up. It actually 68 to 75% of the sightings on a single day happen between 8:30 at night and 10:30 at night.
Wow. Okay.
Well, that didn't feel right. We have since been able to generate charts. If you look at a county, I'll use an example, Cuyahoga County, Ohio. This is where I live now. Okay.
Right.
I was in New York. Last December, we moved to Ohio. When was family.
Welcome. I'm right up the road from you. So I'm right in Maumee. So I'm like right up the
street.
My
God, that's right. You're in the other end of the state. Yeah. Okay.
Yeah. I'm an hour and a half away from you. So I can see across the lake. Yeah.
We took Cuyahoga County.
Yeah.
You look at Cleveland, you see sightings all the way across the hours of the day. Okay.
Yeah.
All right. More numbers.
Right.
But if you look at it by when we did that upgrade with the fixing the names, we added zip code and that longitude to the database.
Oh wow. Nice. Longitude. Nice.
All right. Zip code was telling. It gave us something smaller than a county, bigger than a city.
Right. That's very cool. Yeah.
So what happened is we suspected the sightings based on that time curve were in the suburbs, the bedroom communities, the unincorporated little communities further out, and the little rural villages in the same county. So here's all these counties, and here's one county. Here's Cleveland at the top, and in Cuyahoga County, if you went down the chart, almost no sightings during the daytime out there in the burbs. But as soon as you get out past about 6:30, 7 o'clock at night till about 11:30, there they were.
Wow.
And they actually added up to more than the big city.
Huh. So that makes sense. So
that's why the window for sightings is essentially the bedtime window, about 7:30 to about 11:30, with most of it 8:30 to 10:30. Okay. So,
wow.
And then there is a thing called, we realized that places that don't have rural broadband, that's a driver.
That don't have it.
If you look at the Great Lakes, I was on a radio show one night with the White Book, and I had it laying out, and I had a census chart. I generated these charts, but I really didn't look at them, And I was sitting there on a commercial break, and I looked down at the thing, and I noticed the states that actually touched the Great Lakes had sightings in the many thousands, 2, 3, 4, 5,000 type of thing.
Right.
Moved 2 states away, and it fell into the low hundreds.
Wow.
And we found out, I went out there and investigated some of that, and it started turning out to be rural states, farming states, that type of thing. Okay, you probably saw one of my maps recently on Twitter there, where I had all the counties in the United States, and 150 of them didn't have UFOs. Those are poor rural counties.
Oh, okay.
You look them up, you know where they are.
No broadband access, right?
Or minimal broadband.
Right, okay.
Okay, so that was the deal. In fact, those ones that 105, they didn't report UFOs at all in 20 years.
Wow.
Okay. Zip code wise, there's 41,600 odd active zip codes in the United States. 18,605 reported UFOs. That's 44%.
Wow.
And it's a checkerboard square in almost every state. It's not where you think they are. Now, those are the drivers: population, temperate weather, leisure time, hours of darkness, observer access to broadband. Now, I've had some debunkers get all upset about this. Oh, you're telling us the UFO sightings are driven by mundane things. I said, it's as much about human activity as it is the ETs.
Right. For sure.
Okay, now influencers. Proximity to big bodies of water. Now, a lot of them already knew this, but we were able to confirm this because people looked at our maps and said, well, wait a minute. Florida's the number 2 state. It's got half the population. Again, the population guys saying it's got half the population of Texas. How come Texas has got less sightings? I said, Florida has 1,200 miles of coastline. Texas has 400.
Yeah.
Duh. The thing with the hours of darkness. Remember I told you, like, it dropped a lot, like in Georgia and southern Florida. There's one other state that it did that. That was not a southern state. Alaska.
Oh.
Hours of darkness. It's white nights up there. I worked in those high latitudes. It's white nights all the time.
Wow.
Okay. So, okay, now proximity to water. Okay, now my colleague, and I used to have him on sometime, Tom Conwell, he's up in Troy, New York. I'll get you his information. He's a paranormal guy, and he took our whiteboard and took a big map on the wall, started sticking pins in, destroyed the wall, Proximity to toxic ecosystems. Now, a lot of people knee-jerk, they must be hanging around the nuclear power plants.
Right.
No,
right.
I got an activist group gave me the addresses and zip codes to every nuclear power plant in the country, all 55 of them.
Yeah.
I see no spike in data.
Wow.
Either the people aren't reporting them.
Right.
Or it's just not happening. Where they seem to be hanging out is they're hanging around our dead coal mines, our dead oil fields, dead gas fields, strip mines.
Wow.
Kind of stuff. Our waste areas, our brown fields, our heavily polluted rivers, heavily polluted lakes.
Wow.
The other place Tom says they were hanging out is proximity to geological faults.
Okay. Fault lines. Okay. All right.
They're hanging out around the Yellowstone caldera. the Madrid down to the the Midwest states, all that kind of stuff.
Yeah.
And then we identified something Blue Book identified, high volume media reports. Now, back in Blue Book days, they thought that the sighting here, and then there was a rash of sighting reports in the days that followed. They thought that they were all just like copycat reports.
Right.
When you go back and look at something like NUFOC data, which is the easiest to look at since it's online.
Yeah.
What we saw was, pick a state with a one-day hotspot.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, sighting reports over the next couple of days. And then there was this follow-on stuff that was higher than usual. Turned out, if you look at the press, they talked about MUFON, NUFOC. Okay, people reported them, that type of thing.
Right.
And people said, oh, I had one a couple of years ago. I had one last year, or I had one last month. Maybe I better report that to that NUFOC place or that MUFON place. And they did. And these were retro reports next to the one-day hotspot.
Gotcha. So it just aggregated it up. That's amazing.
Yeah. And then the other thing was what we call the generational effect. Now, this is a theory. Los Angeles County, the city of Los Angeles County, has more sightings in 39 individual states.
Really?
Maricopa County, which is essentially the Phoenix area, has more sightings in 36 individual states.
Wow.
Okay. Downtown Phoenix, zip code 85001, has the most sightings by zip code of any zip code in the country.
Wow. Amazing.
It sounds like a lot, right?
Right.
1,375, but it breaks down to about 80 a year, and it breaks down to about 5 or 6 a month. It's still not that daily mythical hotspot. People think there's some place the UFOs come like a bus schedule. They're every day. I've had 12 different documentary producer companies come to me. We want to know where that spot is. Where you set our cameras up and be waiting for them. And I said, you'll be waiting a long time. There's 4 or 5 a month, even in Phoenix. That's going to be an expensive hotel room, Okay, so that's it. Drivers, population, temperate weather, leisure time, hours of darkness, observer access to broadband, influencers, proximity to water, proximity. Not every state has these. Proximity to water, proximity to toxic, proximity to geological faults, high media reports, and generational thing. What that is Grandpa saw the Battle of Hay in February of 1942. Maybe if we look up, we'll see something. Mom and Dad saw the Phoenix Lights in 1997. Maybe if we look up, we'll see something. There seems to be this cultural effort to look up.
Amazing. And it's trackable.
It's trackable. Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, again, it's a theory, but so was leisure time. And we were able to confirm that.
Right.
Okay.
Right.
So what did we have? 2001 to 2020, 167,632. Now it goes up and down, but an average of about 8,400 a year, about 700 a month.
Wow.
About 161 per week, and an average of 23 per day. And that's pretty solid. Now, there are spike days going after you get the baseline. There are spike days. And I've looked at them. I've looked at a whole year in a state. I do this all the time. And I just print the whole thing out, the bar chart for 365 days. In some states don't have a lot of sighting. It isn't 365 days. I've done it down to certain counties. Like this. Okay. Now people say, oh, Cheryl, the manager of the Staples, I used to go over and get test prints done with. Right? Cheryl, did you take out all the coops, nuts, and crackpots? I said, Ralph, how did you want me to do that? Well, take 20 or 30% off the top. I said, I'll do you one better. Dr. Jacques Villay says 80% of the sightings are noise. MUFON investigators will tell you 70% is noise. Linda and Cheryl used different criteria than they did, and we came up with 68. So let's just say 70% is noise. So we're going to take 70% off the top and keep 30%.
Wow.
Okay. 30% of 167,632 is 50,289. 290%. That's about, and it's for 20 years, you know, about 2,500 a year, about 210 a month.
Right.
That's 210 starships visiting the United States every month for 240 months of 20 years. Okay. Now, the people who need to sleep with a nightlight, oh, but they're much more rare than that, Cheryl. They can't be getting here from there. They're much more rare. Sorry if I go into personal persona for these things, you know, but that's what they sound like. I say, okay.
No, that's exactly what they sound like.
So I say, okay, let's take our 167,632 and let's take 99% off.
Wow. That's being very generous.
So we get 1%.
Yeah, 1%.
1,676 for 20 years, 84 a year, and 7 starships. So the real thing.
Right.
7 starships a month for 240 months in the United States.
Wow.
Now, I think that's newsworthy. And I've gone to many editors and news directors and say, here are the numbers. It's just not newsworthy.
Right. It's amazing. They just reel back, right?
Yes. Crickets.
Yeah.
They just get silent on you. Now, I'll give you one more cool number here.
Yeah. Numbers don't lie. I mean, that's the thing.
That's what people don't get, you know?
It's like...
Now, okay, when I first got into writing my column, I talked to numerous MUFON investigators, and I heard 2 models. I said, how many are there? Remember, I haven't added numbers up yet.
Yeah, right.
All right. They would say 1 in 10 reports what they see. Now, this is based on Stanton Friedman and a number of other people going to a college talk someplace, having everybody raise their hand if they'd seen a UFO. Most of the people put one up, and then you see how many people reported. And there was somebody out in the audience counted up, and it always worked out to about 10%.
Okay, got it.
Barbers. This is doctors doing guys, UFO guys doing it in their offices, and this is what they came up with.
Right.
But if we've got 167,632, then that says we've got, like, 1%, it doesn't work. Okay. We couldn't resolve this.
Right.
And then in 2017, July of 2017, Fox Pictures, the old Fox Pictures, did a movie that was set against the Phoenix Lights. It was a horror movie, and some teenagers or college students get abducted, mysteriously disappear in one of those canyons where these things also showed up, besides the Big Show. Okay.
Right.
And there were a lot of other sightings besides the Big Show.
Right.
Okay. He talked to Dr. Keitel, so they did something else different in their poll. Yeah, they came up with the same 36% believe, 42% are on the fence, 17% say it's hogwash.
Right,
okay? But they ask another question. How many people say they've seen a UFO? And it came back with a number of 16.74%. Now I had a metric of adult Americans. So I took 2010's census, middle way in my 20-year plan, and the adult Americans, 18 plus, would be 258 million rounding it off. Okay,
a lot of people.
16% of that would be 43,189,000. Okay. Now we did it back against the bigger number. If we just did 10% of that 43 million, it would tell us that we had 4.3 million reports.
Wow. Right.
Okay. I even calculated it. There was another guy said, well, of population, only 1 of 10 in the population has seen a UFO. Right. And of the ones that have seen the UFO, only 1 in 10 reports it. I cranked those numbers. They don't work. I tried it a dozen ways. It doesn't work.
Right.
But what we do come up with is I have cheat codes down here.
It's good. I can't remember these numbers.
I can that you do. Hold a lot of them in my head, but as soon as I get on the show, I go blank.
That's okay.
Okay, so what it works out to is that 16% divided by the amount of reported numbers. Now, I know I allow for people who didn't report it to MUFON, didn't report it to UFOC. They called the police department and it stayed on the blotter and it didn't go any further. They maybe called the local newspaper. The editors in my paper collected all this stuff and threw them away at the end of the shift. Okay? It went no further. And then there are people who get on social media and share it with their friends.
Right.
Okay? And then I did some polls in some of the groups on Facebook at one point.
Yeah.
So if you divide that 167,000 into the 43 million, it works out to, the first time I did it, I didn't feel comfortable with the number. So I went and did all 50 states adult population census data against sightings. And it came up with a bell curve. Okay. So 1 in 150 people reports what they see. Down at the other end, 1 in 475 people reports what they see, and then everybody in the middle, and up around the top is the 1 in 200 something. I say 250 people like a round number. The actual number is 1 in 257 people reports what they see.
Wow. That's amazing. That is amazing. And that's all based on stigma. I think that's honestly, I mean, the Robinson panel and the 70 years of making people feel like they're
tinfoil news channels coming out and make fun of you on the evening news. Or you do, their stringer would go out and get a nice interview, edit it really nicely, do a nice job of interviewing Joe the chicken farmer or Joe the pig farmer or whatever the case is. And then as soon as they got done running the piece, they cut back to the anchor and the anchor would go. They still do it.
They still do it. Or they'll play the X-Files music in the background. That's the other thing.
So I have reached out to all the newspapers all the major newspapers in Ohio. They won't talk to me. Okay. I sent them the data of their county.
Wow.
So I can give you one hell of a story.
It's amazing.
Obviously, I'm a kook, not a crackpot, because I do this stuff.
Wow. That's still, you would think that now, I mean, even now that the tides are turning,
Well, the last one I did, Linda and I, about 2 months ago, we sent, still summer, okay, we picked out 8 major colleges and universities, some of them whose names you would know in a heartbeat here in Cuyahoga County, Ohio.
Okay.
Gave them a really terse introduction letter. So, that we didn't have Congress was getting ready to investigate. We didn't know that they were going to say these things are awful. Okay, I'm getting ready to send these colleges another letter. And then the second page was a 1-page or 2-page document that had a couple of these big maps like we've seen on Twitter. Okay. And basically, it was called the scale of things. And we said, hey, this is how many zip codes. This is how many reported. This is how many counties. Da 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 da. Oh, by the way, that's for the United States. Here's Ohio, and the 5,543, something like that for this thing. And oh, by the way, here in Cuyahoga County, here's how many we have. And here's how many counties and zip codes in Cuyahoga County reported it. Okay? And crickets. Again, silence. Nobody answered that. Now, we're getting ready to send them a second letter and say, are you sure you don't want to have us come and give a presentation to your academia and your students? Because Congress just said these things are all for it. And we're the national experts on this stuff. But crickets. And that's what's so bloody frustrating.
Yeah. No, I totally agree. I think that your work is sorely needed, and I can't believe that anybody that doesn't pick up the desk reference at all and not see the amount of sheer dedication and work that you did. is just astounding, the amount of data that's there, and just some of the things that you've been able to peel out of that data to look for those things. I mean, we've heard this all through the UFO community, and I've actually heard it in many circles as well, is that once you start seeing patterns, that's when it gets a little weird, right? Once you start seeing patterns, that's when people start taking an interest in your work and seeing, because there's no particular rhyme or reason to any of it. But once you do start picking them out, then it becomes very clear what these are, and it's really interesting. I mean, not to me, I don't know, but I mean, you've seen the data yourself,
Well, here's the new book, the new series is coming out.
Yeah.
We couldn't print that book, foot and half deep book.
Right.
So we're going to do two things. And Linda and I just agreed on I ran into it. I wanted to have it out before now, but we've done the numbers for every state. Now, I don't know if you've got a copy of the pink book by any chance.
I've not gotten one yet, but I will.
The first part of the pink book has all of our narrative in it, all the things we discovered, basically a paper.
Right.
Okay, we've done that, and it's about 35, 40 pages. Okay. And then what we did was we did charts and graphs for every single state. What we're getting ready to do is we came up with a catchy title. There's going to be one for every state. And the first one to come out will be, and the name of the book is UFOs in Ohio and Where to Find Them.
Yes.
And kind of
awesome.
Hooking into that Fantastic Beasts and Where to Find Them kind of.
Yeah.
But every book will be called that.
Okay, great.
And basically what we do is we do a summary for that state, like 4 or 5 page summary in terms of charts, graphs, and numbers just for the highlights. And then we do a dump, and I love this, we do a dump by county, zip code, 2001 to 2020 across the top of the horizontal page, the landscape page. Nice. And every shape and what sightings, what years. Now we're not giving you the write-ups on them. We're just giving you, county had 5 shapes show up, and here's their frequency. Oh, this county had all 29 show up. Here's their frequency, it's 29 shapes. And if we do that, and I'm still alive at the end of it, we're going to take the actual shape ones, not in the data. There's these unknown, anomalous, that kind of thing. There's a couple of things that you really can't say what they are. Like, there's people think UFOs. They don't think in terms of triangle, saucer, fireball, ring of lights, square, rectangle, that kind of stuff. Boomerangs, V-shaped ones, that kind of thing. Chevrons.
Yeah.
So we're going to basically generate a book for every single shape.
Wow.
Okay. And then we're going to do that chart printout where you actually get a dump for 20 years of what counties and zip codes within that state had those sightings, and what years they had this, and the volume of those sightings.
Wow. That's going to be very, very awesome. I'm excited about the Ohio one, obviously.
Okay. Well, Ohio and Michigan will be the first ones. We generated the charts for all of them. We got the front end all built. And we just have to do some tweaking. When you build a book, there's the front matter, there's what they call the vertical page, it's got the title page, it's got copyright. You got to change that because we're doing a series. You have to add a series number in there. You have to put the ISBN number. So that's done just about the time we're uploading it to Amazon. And then we also have to do that tiny little 4-page summary for every single state. We're about, I would say we're about half done.
Wow. Awesome. Very cool.
I just have to get off my butt and finish it. Well, I got a little depressed because the thing that holds you back on producing the book is the size of the cover.
Really?
Yeah, because you only have a 10-page column. It's 5 pages plus or minus center number. So if I say it's a 360-page book, the cover, if I tell the system 360 pages, it will, in the PDF that we upload to them, one final big PDF with the whole book, it will look at that and it will pick out a format and it will send me a template if I want to design them. And I was going to be here with Doomsday doing the covers. So Linda and I agreed on this last week to sit down and have a real serious talk over 2 fingers of whiskey, and said,
it's my speed.
why don't I just use the system knows how many pages the PDF is. They have stock covers. And they'll make the adjustments in the automation. That's why automation helps us here.
Yeah, right.
So we're going to finish up and have all 50 done. And remember those tweaks I got to do.
Yeah.
And when I get back, Linda and I are going to Michigan to UFO Contact Conference tomorrow morning. We're driving up there.
Awesome. Very cool.
We're going to give a presentation up at Contact. And,
very cool.
In fact, we're the first presenters out there. We're going to set the tone for the weekend.
Awesome. Very cool.
So we're going to do that. But basically, when I get back, I'm going to just, put the time clock on and finish these tweaks I have to do, finish the versos. And then once we have all the PDFs done for all 50 states, we're going to produce that whole series, the state by and where to find them. Illinois and where the UFOs in Illinois and where to find them, that type of thing. And we're going to finish them. California will be the biggest. We know it's going to be upwards of around 530 pages. Wow. It's within the span of what Amazon can print for us.
Wow.
So they'll all be available. So we do that. And then we've got our analysis books, the 2 other, and we're going to do 2 more analysis because I have discovered how many hotspots there are in the United States.
Wow.
I took a break a couple of months ago.
Wow.
The myth is there's a hotspot. Set your clock by it. It's like a bus schedule. No, it doesn't exist.
Really? Okay.
But I used to think there was maybe 150 one-day hotspots out there. This is what you have to keep in mind. One state, our 20-year period, 2001 to 2020, is 7,303 days, and that's including the zip code, the leap years.
Leap year. Okay.
50 states, that works out to 146,060 days.
Okay.
Of that, we've identified 737 plus or minus 5 hotspots, one-day hotspots.
Wow.
Someplace, I'll give an example. I use Indiana a lot. We use Indiana again. 2008, April 16, 2011. Daily average in the United States was 23. That particular day was 60.
Huh.
Okay. Did a breakout report. And as usual, those additional states that reported, it was onesie twosies. Everything was onesie twosies. Except Indiana, a state that averages 2 sightings a week, had 25 in one day.
Wow.
And it's become known as the Kokomo Lights. But that 25 one day, I have it down to the municipalities, I have it down to the zip codes, and the 2 or 3 counties that it showed up in.
Wow.
Okay. And so what we're going to do with this hotspots book, that's when I'm going to do. I got people bugging me for it now. Got to get the states books done. I'm going to do the hotspots book, and because I've done all the hotspots, I know where they are now. Okay,
right.
I'm going to do it, and then I've got a couple of interns helping me. People volunteered online.
Very cool.
I send them a date, and I say, "Here's the search pattern I want you to use. Fill in the date and search, and tell me if there's any traditional media reporting."
Ah, very cool. Very cool.
I don't want to know if UFO hunters went there. I want to know if WXYZ went there.
Yeah,
I want to know if WBYT radio went there and reported. Okay?
That's awesome.
I'm trying to come up with that information, and we're going to narrow it down. And these are one-day hotspots. Nothing ever happens there, but they had something wild going on. California had about 200 of them, but California had 21,000 sightings in 20 years. Okay?
Right.
It's a different ballgame with them. But but even with California, it was only 0.5% of the total number of days. Most days are empty boxes.
Right. But you just have these spikes that just shoot up out of the data.
No. You get onesie twosies all the time.
Okay.
Sometimes they're threesies.
Okay.
4 or bigger was statistically significant.
Ah, okay. Got it. Okay. 4 or bigger. Yeah.
Okay. So that's what like I said, I've identified that. I got those spreadsheets set aside in a different file. And that's what we're getting ready to do. when we're done with this, and if I survive making this over the next year and a half, okay, it is going to be the largest published collection of compiled, analyzed UFO data ever published in human history.
That's amazing.
And the State University of New York at Albany has taken my papers.
That's amazing. Very cool.
Now, we get this big collection done. We'd like to be able to stand in front of some committee at some university and say, can we have our PhDs now? You know,
maybe you'll get one from somebody when they come down and say, here you go.
You know, Linda takes the she's an art history, was an art history major besides her science degrees. And she likes to take the Van Gogh mentality, you know, so we'll be famous after we're dead.
Well, I hope that's not the case. I really don't, because I think that wouldn't that be amazing if you just show up to the next congressional hearing and just drop the book on the desk and be like, okay, now explain this. You know, what do you guys have? I mean, what are the data that the government's sitting on?
I told them back in 2019, this is before we knew about COVID. I said, you know, it's going to be a whole bunch of Pentagon spooks. And it's going to be a whole bunch of swaggering pilots.
Yep, and that's what it was. That's what it is. That's how we got. Yeah.
There's talk right now that they may. I know that. Okay, Rubio had our pink book last summer, a year ago, last summer, 2021 summer.
Right.
One morning, I got up. I had a case of these books.
Yeah.
I put 2 pink books on the couch. Went over and wrote a draft letter to the head of the Senate Select Committee on Intelligence. And
nice.
Duplicate the same letter for the head of the House Select Committee on Intelligence. Okay, nice. Rubio is the guy in the Senate. Okay?
Right.
And it was a draft letter. Okay. I laid it on the pink book, and then I generated a chart for both of these guys' home state, right down to the zip code, kind of like we're going to do with the state book.
Yeah.
Rubio's was 1.5 inches thick, you know, right down to the zip code. Right.
Right.
Same thing for the guy in the House. Turned out he was a New York guy, so I went ahead and gave it to him.
Yeah.
And just before the congressional hearings opened up, Andre Carson, who's been chairing it, his office got that same kind of a package, the pink book and 1.5 inch printout for Indiana.
That's awesome.
Haven't heard a thing from any of them. But about 3 weeks ago, I'd been writing, Senator Schumer was my senator in upstate New York. Okay?
Yeah.
And for 7 years, I wrote him regular letters. We need to have congressional hearings. We need to have congressional hearings. You know, I'm a broken record. We need to have congressional hearings. There's something big going on here. You know, here's some data. You know,
I
got a very, not a terse, I got a nice letter from him. So I got a nice letter from the head of the majority leader of the Senate of the United States, thanking me for supporting congressional hearings.
That's very nice. Very nice. That's
I got
awesome.
that about a month ago. I was like,
It's amazing how the tides have changed. You know, I mean, I think that they're going to listen to the constituents. You know, I mean, I bug my senators and congressmen all the time. I'm like, hey, this is real. This is going on. Let's, I get the form letters back.
Next time you bug them, drop them a bug letter.
I will.
As your hearings are going on, make sure you get the 2 statistical experts, Cheryl and Linda Costa.
Yeah, there you
go. Tell them
that
if they start hearing this, because right now they're measuring it around military bases. And I think it's important for the Congress to look at it from the scale of it for the entire freaking United States, not just military fleets.
Well, especially from their own constituents as well. Like you said, you get it right down to their zip code, right down to their base, or like you said, congressional districts, right? If we get down to the congressional districts, here you go. This is your congressional district. This is how many reports you've had. These are the people that are voting for you, potentially or not, that care about these things because they do, right? They're not
a rich guy in California told me that he would buy me the database of what the current congressional districts and zip codes are.
Wow.
He said he would pay for it. So I may be looking him up to say, by the way, sorry I burped it.
It's okay, but I didn't know there were. I didn't know that you had to pay for that data. I didn't think that was that wasn't.
That one's not available. That's a third party. The government does not publish that. That a third party did.
Wow, that's amazing.
It's not cheap. It's a couple $100, but
Still.
Okay, here's the other thing. There are people that say, well, Cheryl and Linda, I've had several people review the book, the Pink Book, and say, Cheryl and Linda deserve a grant and a staff of 20 people to do whatever further research they're doing. And we made the point the last couple of presentations we've done at major UFO conferences. By the way, all this data you're loving was paid for by the pensions of two old ladies.
Yeah, right. Exactly.
What's unconscionable here? Okay.
It's amazing. It's amazing. Yeah, I mean, has anybody contacted you from the government or any agencies to say, hey, we really appreciate your work. Can we help you or can we hurt you? How about that? Nothing, just ghosted.
Well, yes. Well, no. We know for a fact that the Congressional Information Office has copies of the White Book.
Okay. Cool.
Because we heard from one of their librarians.
Nice.
Okay. And we suspect they probably heard about the Pink Book.
Got it.
And judging from some inside information I have, the Vatican has the Pink Book too, so.
Wow. Now that's a big step there. I mean, the Vatican's very interested in all of this.
Both the White Book and the Pink Book, both of them have been sold internationally. Remember, we published with Amazon, and it's print on demand. So one of my books I did this past January, I'm a bona fide witch. I've been at it for 44 years. And when a witch in my tradition retires, it's expected that you'll write a book about your life in magic. It might be, history of your coven, might be your autobiography as a witch, whatever. I decided to take on magical physics.
Oh, that sounds interesting.
And I've written a book that has almost no gobbledygook in it. It's only 144 pages, but the reviews you see online say she cuts to the chase. It's all here.
Yeah, right. Cool.
So, and my adult daughter said to me, she saw the original drafts. She said you're passing out loaded shotguns to third graders. Because I made it that simple. But you have to be able to meditate and clear your mind. And most people are too busy looking at their phones. So it's not going to happen,
Well, that's another book I'm going to read, Cheryl, right there. I'm going to read that one because that interests me as well.
It's called Magical Musings of a Rogue Witch.
I love it. That's cool.
It's available on Amazon, and the blurbs are something to love because I sent it to peers. Published peers, and I thought they were all going to hate it because I took this very unorthodox approach to teaching magic, and they almost all came back and said, "This is the way we should be teaching it."
Awesome. Well, cool. Very good. That's awesome because I'm convinced that all of this stuff that we see in the sky has some type of esoteric connection.
There's the other aspect of this thing. Consciousness is a big deal.
It is.
Okay.
Totally.
And Ray Hernandez, if you can ever get him on the program, he's the guy with for the Dr. Edgar Mitchell Foundation. Beyond UFOs, it's like an 900 page book or something like that.
Yeah.
Him and I were having a really nice, polite argument down at Arkansas in 2019, and we were sitting there having this deep conversation about the consciousness stuff. Having a cup of coffee and eating some, banana cream pie or something, and we got done with our 25, 30 minutes worth of very intense, what I call a monastic debate. Remember, I used to live in a Buddhist monastery, and we went to stop talking, and we realized like 40 people would pull chairs and were listening to us argue, but the bottom line is that he is of the same opinion I am. Remote viewing, ghosts, other paranormal activity, ley lines, all this stuff, it's all one phenomenon. Stop stovepiping. UFO people won't talk to ghost hunters, won't talk to Bigfoot guys. It's all one phenomenon.
Yes, I totally say that all the time. It's the, I talked to a guy named Patrick Jackson that tied the whole ghost phenomenon into this whole thing as well with the orbs and things like that. And you're right. David Paulides is missing 411, or people just go missing in national parks. That's another part of this whole thing.
As I said, hijinks in the house every night. Once a week. But I'll give you an example. I made a comment about 2 weeks ago. Linda has a sewing machine called a serger. Sergers they have several rolls of thread on them because they have a very complex way of using the stuff.
Oh, okay.
Usually it's more than a sewing, it's like a super sewing machine.
Gotcha.
And you use it to trim and things like this. Okay, and it's a pain in the ass to thread.
Right. Okay. Yeah, because you put all these things on there.
Yeah, it's a real pain in the ass. She about 2 weeks ago, she says, "Did you touch my serger?" Now we both sew.
Okay.
And we both sew a lot. And I said, "No, I don't. I never use this serger. I'm a straight stitch person. I have a 20-year-old brother sewing machine, and I've got a 1918 vintage Singer.
Wow.
My brother quit when we were making masks for people in our apartment complex in 2020.
Yeah.
I got in my car, put a mask on, drove out to my storage unit, pulled out this big piece black iron, 1918 Singer sewing machine, and I brought it home, and that thing was a battleship. It just kept going, right?
Yeah.
I actually like using it. It's so simple.
Yeah.
But the bottom line was, for threading, it's all somebody would mess with it. We've had situations where somebody messed with the fish oil in the big tank.
Really?
Turned off the air feed, pull out the plants or something. Weird stuff. And I mentioned it to one of the other investigators, our buddy Linda on there. I mentioned to her, I said, "Yeah, we called it activity in the evening. They messed with my serger too, And I said, they're interesting. I had a joke. Alien stole my pizza cutter. The little wheel. Who knows? They pick stuff up. Sometimes it comes back. Remember, I told you I had books missing here.
Yeah.
Okay. Then suddenly one day you get up, you come out with your first cup of coffee, and you look on the coffee table, and they're all stacked up.
You just got to roll with it, and that's what, one of the things that Tom DeLonge mentions recently was just that the more you acknowledge it, and the more that you put emotion behind it and see that those happens, that the more frequently they happen, the more they start showing up. And
when I lived in a Buddhist monastery, my Lama, when I say Buddhist monastery, I had the buzz cut, wore Dalai Lama robes to work every day at Lockheed Martin headquarters. And I wasn't the only one. There were two of us from our congregation that were both ordained nuns, and we both worked in corporate security at Lockheed. and this particular group of people, it's only 125 of us in the company, and two Buddhist nuns. Statistically, Buddhist nuns were taking over security at Lockheed. It was so funny. But one of my lamas one day and I were having a long talk about paranormal stuff.
Yeah.
The reason we had this long talk was we had been out there, our Grand Holiness had come to town. And after he gave us big talks in the temple and everything, and 500 people went home,
Yeah.
We broke out the grills, and he wanted to have hot dogs and hamburgers, and he was out there, 65-year-old guy, he's out there playing basketball with the young monks, and that kind of thing. And there were 35, 40 monks and nuns, mostly nuns, so about 35 nuns. And he's in there. One of the nuns looks over and asks Holiness, he's eating his hot dogs, says, we talk about being compassionate to beings other places other than Earth. Be compassionate to beings in the greater universe.
Right.
Are there any beings on the moon? He sits back and scans the monks and nuns and points at me and another nun, we'll call her Vicky, and points at me and Vicky and said, you two have been touched by the sky dancers.
Whoa. Thanks.
I was already, because we were both witches as it was, and the other monks and nuns knew that, and they were kind of creeped out by that, The lamas were good with us because we knew the physics of magic. They were good with us. The other monks and nuns, Okay, so I looked at Vicky and I said, they're asking about the population of people on the backside of the moon. She says, yeah, I know. And she says, she looks at me and says, it is seasonal. Yeah, it is. So right now, okay. Right now, and he said, yeah, 5.
Five.
And I'm like, the worst. Thank you. Moved on to the next question, just very matter of factly. And for the next 3 months, no, they wouldn't talk to either.
5. Wow.
I've taught remote viewing over 20 years.
Yeah. Yeah.
Okay. I've had about 6 classes. And this isn't like a 1-day class. This is like if you sign up for the class, it's like 2 weekends a month for like a year. Okay. And we run targets. And I had Linda's intern stuffed an envelope full of target queue envelopes, that type of thing.
Yeah.
There are some target cards we recycled that they put a new serial number on it, that type of thing.
Gotcha.
And every single class eventually got the base on the backside of the moon.
Wow.
They didn't know what the card was. They just started working the protocol. They got meditated down, cooled down. We did a meditation. They started doing the protocols. We started walking through it. Got all done, and 2 or 3 of the ladies put their pens down. Said, boy, whoever those people were, they did not like us being there. They were aware of you? Yes, they were aware of us. And then we opened up the card and showed them what the target card was. Visit the alien base on the backside of the moon today. It was, you have to be sensitive to temporal coordinates. And it was every one of the classes had done that. So when I was doing a summary at the end of the year for this, I said, I've taken you to the Titanic. I've taken you to Mars to find one of the rovers. I've taken you to the backside of the moon. Some of you have tried to go in the White House, and I said, try if it's warded. They couldn't get in.
Oh, yeah.
Even remote viewers couldn't get in. Somebody in our government is magically oriented.
Wow. They're throwing a block up, huh?
Yeah. And a couple of the bases are like that, too.
Wow.
I'm not going to go into it deeply. Okay.
No. I've heard that as well. I've heard that, but I heard the Ego Swan thing about the dark side or the dark side of the moon on the base.
That's where I got the original idea for it.
Yeah.
Ego Swan, and the people who trained me were part of Dr. Courtney Brown's team there with Farsight. Okay.
Gotcha. The Farsight. Yeah.
And that came from. They wanted to offer this like $700, $1,400 class down in New York City, and it's expensive with hotel rooms being $500 a night, that type of thing. And I wrote them and I said, what if I could offer your class $45 a night hotel rooms and I won't charge you for the space? I said, how would you do that? And I said, at the time, I was running a small Buddhist center in upstate New York for my lineage. And I had this big ranch-style house. They had no furniture in it. I went down to the wedding supply store. They rented me some church-style tables, and we set it all up for them and everything. And nice. The other monastic got to go for free.
Nice.
Do the class for free. And,
cool.
So that's how I got trained. So, and then I had follow-on connection with them, things like that. So I've been doing it for quite a while, and I like teaching it. In fact, I'm getting ready to teach an advanced mystics class here in about 2 weeks.
Nice.
And we had 30 people apply. We took 6.
Wow, that's cool.
I was prepared to take upwards of 10, but they all had to write like a 300-word essay, tell me what their background was and why they want to study this.
Yeah, nobody's doing that, right?
No, they did.
Unless you're serious. I mean,
no, they did.
Oh, they all did. Wow,
yeah,
wow.
They all. Some of them wrote the minimum, and some of them wrote the whole thing. One guy went in 3-4 pages.
Wow.
But it's come down to 6 people who are actually going to take the class.
Wow. So what's the class entail?
It's 2 Mondays a month for a year.
Wow.
And I'll be teaching. I'll teach them my advanced physics view of magic. No lighting candles, no dancing around in funny robes around the fire. I am going to teach them the pure physics of magic. I've taught this class one other time. It was in 2003.
Awesome.
And we started out with 17 students, 1 finished.
Whoa.
Okay. It's not a hard class, but it's not easy. The thing that washes them out is they can't get a handle on meditation. Everybody wants to play with their phone. Everybody wants to be tied into all the distractions.
Right.
I told them I needed them to be able to meditate, work up to it. Start with 2 minutes a day, but I needed them to work up to about 15 to 20 minutes of meditation a day. And they always came up with some reason why they couldn't.
Well, it's just I think it's very different in the West than it is the East. I mean, but obviously in different centers and different places around the world. I mean, it's different, but I try really hard, and it's not easy, but
we get so much distraction being fed into our subconscious, the chatter. Okay. And they've done a lot of scientific research on the chatter. There's a book out there about it. I can always send you the title if you're interested. The bottom line is, if people are stop being arrogant and saying, well, if those monks can do it for an hour, I should be able to do that. No, they started when they were 7.
Right. Yeah. Okay? Right.
But the deal is if you start with 2 minutes, in about 2 or 3 months, one day you'll sit down to do your 2 minutes, and you'll do it. You'll end up doing it for 5 minutes because it's so easy. Okay. Once you get it past the point of not having all that crap in your subconscious come up like ghosts and confront you, your boss yelling at you, your mother yelling at you, your sister yelling at you, your wife yelling at you, your 5th grade teacher still yelling at you, once they manage that, then anybody can do it. And then it's a matter of turning thought into form. We turn visualization. You see on TV, these guys get up there in movies like Harry Potter, and they chant some big incantation. Words don't cut it. The mechanism to touch the universe and the great consciousness is nonverbal, and it has to be communicated in visual. So skilled witches know how to trick their mind using everything from pictures, music, dancing, games of charades, so to speak,
Right.
to generate the magic.
Okay? The ritual of the thing, kind of
that's what the ritual's about. Too many people see all that stuff and think it's about the words. It doesn't understand the words. The younger self doesn't. Or what we would actually, in Christian tradition, would call the Holy Spirit. That's how you communicate. Okay, even Christian tradition tells you touch the consciousness through the Holy Spirit. Okay,
right.
But so the bottom line is that's how the mechanisms work. And it goes 2 ways. You can do active magic, where you direct and manifest something. Now, you don't wiggle your nose and separate people. Okay?
Right. Yeah.
And sometimes this thing that you want to have happen, sometimes you have to focus on that thing a little bit, a couple of minutes a day, every day for weeks, maybe months. Some things, I had a television show in 1991. I meditated on that for 2 years, every day, 2 minutes a day, every day for 2 years. And all I managed to get was a measly contract for 6 episodes. Of course, a little story went out on the Associated Press, and suddenly publicity was raining down on that little cable station, and we ended up getting contracts for upwards of 70 episodes over 3 years. So, but funny how that works, Yeah, I mean, you're only dealing with a couple of witches, and for God's sakes, So.
Cheryl, you're awesome. I really appreciate you taking the time to chat.
Anytime, my friend, anytime. And as we start making the statement, when the Ohio book comes out, let's do this again. We'll talk about just Ohio. There's some cool stuff going on here. This place has been a hotbed for years. Ohio's always in the top 10.
I know, it's amazing. And I always thought it was because of the lakes, but you said that the water's not it's really not the driver. I mean, obviously the lakes probably, it is. Okay. It is a driver then.
Yeah, you got
body of water.
You got one of the major lakes here. Okay.
Yeah.
And you got Wright-Patterson Air Force Base. I mean,
Yeah.
Remember, that's where they took the Roswell stuff to the Foreign Technology Division,
Yeah, it's still there.
Well, I don't know. We don't know that.
It's still, well, I mean, the Foreign Technology Division is still there. I'm not sure that the parts are still there or anything.
That's one of those places we can't touch or remote deal.
Right, Pat, at all? What about Battelle or Battelle? We can get to Battelle. We can't even talk about Battelle, huh? It's right down the road. It's right near Columbus.
51 chain. They moved everything out of this nature during the Clinton administration. Well, there were 47 or 75 or 100 satellite trucks parked in front of the White House during the Clinton scandal with Monica Lewinsky.
Oh, yeah, the Lewinsky thing, yeah.
Nobody was watching what was going on out there.
Everybody was just trucking everything out of the way.
This is the old intelligence person telling you this. I was saying, if they're generating that much publicity in D.C., I lived in D.C. at the time.
Oh, yeah.
But if you're doing this, what are you doing with
doing over here? Yes, that's what I'm always talking about. They're doing the distraction here, and I took intelligence analysis in college as well, and it was like,
where I'm coming from.
Yeah, I knew exactly where you're coming from. So the whole entire Trump presidency, I'm like, what in the hell are they doing in the background that they don't want us to pay attention to? If they have this circus going on here with this whole Trump shit going on for this entire presidency, they're moving something that they don't want anybody to watch over on that side.
The best we know is they moved the whole operation that was Area 51 tests a lot of new technology.
Right. Yeah.
If there was any of this UFO stuff out there, it's long gone. And we believe it is in an underground base in the mountains of deep in Colorado someplace.
Oh, yeah. It's got to be the other side of the Air Force.
We don't know. We don't know where it is. And I don't think it's anywhere near like the Air Force Academy. Like
oh, yeah. I always heard that was the rumor. Yeah. Get it up, get it out of the way, get it somewhere out
I think we need to wrap this up.
Definitely. Cheryl, thank you very, very much for your time. I appreciate it.
Anytime. And you and I need to have a good long talk about the Masons.
Oh, yeah, we do.
Not on this thing.
No, not on this thing. No, we can stop this thing. But yeah, we definitely have to talk a long talk about the Masons. I'll see a couple of them this weekend, and I'm going to definitely talk to them about some of our stuff. But I'll let stop on this thing so we can chat.
Thank you very much. By the way, it's an absolute pleasure to finally meet you in person, so to speak. And I look forward to actually meeting you in the flesh at some point in the future. We're just down the road from each other.
Exactly. We'll find a hot spot and jump in there and see if we can find some UFOs.
There you go. Bye-bye, my friend. Thank you for